The chandeliers didn't just light the room, they declared status. Hanging like frozen galaxies above the Grand Meridian's private dining hall, each crystal glinted like a silent reminder, you belong here or you don't. Emma sat at the farthest end of the table. Not by chance, not by accident, by silent design. She was placed next to the coat checklist and 3 chairs away from the first wine pour. Out of frame, out of conversation, out of mind. In front of her sat a plate with gold-trimmed edges and a name card in elegant calligraphy that read simply, Emma. No title, no honorific, just a name. She was the only one without MBA, CEO, or doctor printed beside it. She smoothed the hem of her simple black dress. Target, clearance rack, $28 plus tax. She still remembered the price. Not because she was ashamed, but because that same week she'd quietly invested $6. $2 million into a luxury property in Miami, and no one at this table would ever guess. Her cousins laughed with their wine glasses held high, casually bragging about internships at banks they got through family connections. Her uncle talked about his golf trip with a senator, while her mother boasted about Sarah's designer gown being flown in from Milan. No one turned toward Emma. No one asked what she was working on, what her life looked like, or if she was okay. They only noticed her when it was time to judge. She watched as Michael, her younger brother and the star of the weekend, smiled for the 50th photo of the night. His tuxedo was tailored, his teeth whitened, his future bright and blessed. His fiancée Sarah looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. And yet, Emma's mind wasn't on their clothes. It was on the ceiling, specifically the golden chandelier above Sarah's head. She knew exactly how much it cost, $72,000, imported. Italian, paid in full by her, because Emma didn't just own shares, she owned the building. The irony, delicious. But tonight wasn't about revenge, not yet. Is that the same dress you wore to Amy's graduation? Someone asked from 3 seats down. The voice was sweet. The intention was not. Emma smiled. Another cousin leaned in, whispering a little too loudly. God, that car she drives. How does it still run? They chuckled as if poverty was a party trick Emma refused to stop performing. Michael, her brother, grinned across the table, his voice smooth like polished marble. You know, Em, he said, if you ever need help getting a better apartment, Sarah's dad has some connections. We don't want you living in that place downtown forever. Sarah laughed, a perfect little sound behind a manicured hand. It's so vintage, she said, drawing out the word like it had a bad taste. More laughter. Emma reached for her water, still smiling. She'd spent years perfecting that smile. Not the one she gave to cameras, not the one for client meetings. No, this one. The quiet, practiced smile that said, I hear you, I'm not surprised, and I don't care because I already won. It was the smile of a woman who'd signed a multi-million-dollar deal that morning before brushing her teeth. The smile of someone whose personal assistant was reviewing yacht itineraries while her family debated whether she could afford Uber. Her dress might have been $28, but the watch hidden beneath the cuff was one of only 5 in the world, custom designed, unbranded, and gifted to her by a CEO whose IPO she'd helped triple in value. They didn't see it. They didn't want to. They were too busy watching her surface to ever realize the ocean she kept beneath it. It always starts with a joke. That's the thing about families who confuse cruelty with comedy. They say it with a smile, so you're not allowed to cry. Just don't bring one of those homemade photo albums again, Bradley smirked, taking a sip of his imported scotch, unless you want the guests to fall asleep before dessert. Laughter, again. Emma's lips didn't move, but her hands tightened around the water glass. Maybe she'll give us a gift card from the gas station, someone else chimed in. Or maybe she'll just sing us a song. She always was so artistic. The word artistic was delivered like a disease. Emma didn't answer. She'd learned long ago that defending herself only gave them more to attack. But inside, something shifted. Not rage, not pride, precision. Because cruelty that hides behind smiles is the most calculating of all. Her mother giggled softly, clearly amused. Oh, come on. Emma does what she can. Not everyone's meant to thrive. Not everyone's meant to thrive. The words pierced like glass. Not shouted, not screamed, but said calmly, casually, as if they were describing the weather. Emma looked down, not in shame, but to hide the flash in her eyes. They didn't see it. They never had. The champagne had just been poured when Michael leaned back in his chair, his smile a little too wide. "So, Emma," he said, raising his glass casually, "what did you get us for the big day? I mean, I know things are tight for you, but Sarah and I were just wondering." The room froze, but only for a second. Then the laughter came. Not loud, not cruel, but sharp, like a paper cut across the soul. Sarah covered her mouth, giggling. "Oh, Michael, don't tease. I'm sure she did her best. Maybe a cute little card." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but the poison was unmistakable. Emma looked up slowly, the corners of her mouth still holding that same soft smile. Bradley, never one to miss an opportunity to kick someone while they're sitting down, chimed in, "Please tell me it's not another scrapbook. Those homemade Emma specials, I still have mine from Grandma's birthday. It's somewhere." More polite laughter, more amusement at her expense. Even her father chuckled behind his brandy snifter. Even her mother smiled just slightly, just enough. Emma swallowed her water carefully. The glass shook a little in her hand, but not from fear, no. It was the tremor of a storm about to break free. The laughter was soft, but it sliced clean. It wasn't belly-deep, genuine laughter. No, it was the kind people used to keep the blood off their hands while they stabbed you anyway. Emma heard it all. The giggles, the clinks of crystal, the smud remarks passed between bites of filet mignon. She felt her hands loosen from the water glass. And then she looked up, not with a fake smile, not with a trembling lip, but with silence sharpened to a blade. She looked directly at Michael. "I was thinking," she said, voice calm, eerily calm, "that maybe a card would be just fine." The table froze. Someone coughed. Someone laughed again nervously, but it didn't catch this time. The laughter had turned stale. Michael leaned forward, smirking. "A card?" he repeated, his voice louder now. "Emma, this isn't a middle school birthday party. This is my wedding." He gestured around the room as if the gilded decor gave him moral authority. "We're at the Grand Meridian. This is the venue. We pulled strings to book this place. And you think a card is appropriate?" Emma's expression didn't change, but her tone did. "You're right," she said softly. "It's not appropriate at all." There are moments in life when silence becomes power, and tonight, Emma owned every second of it. She didn't shout, she didn't flinch, she simply reached for her phone. The room, already quiet from her previous words, turned still like air waiting for lightning. "You're right," she said, locking eyes with Michael. "A card isn't enough, not for this level of celebration." He smirked again. "Glad we agree." But Emma was no longer talking to him. She was dialing. Her phone lit up with a contact labeled James R. Grandstone, HQ. She placed the phone to her ear, calm as glass. "Hello, James. Yes, I know it's late, but I need you to cancel the Henderson wedding scheduled for tomorrow." Pause. Not a breath was taken at the table. "Yes, the ceremony at 3, cocktail hour at 5, reception at 7. All of it." The air turned heavy like a thundercloud ready to burst. "No, not a scheduling conflict," she added. Make it clear. The owner has decided it no longer aligns with Grandstone Hospitality's values. Her voice was still gentle, almost polite. But no one in that room heard it as soft. They heard it as judgment, final, sharp, inevitable. "James," Emma said clearly into the phone, "cancel the wedding." The entire table stopped. The clinking of forks, the low hum of conversation from nearby guests, even the pianist in the corner slowed mid-chord. It was as if the words had cut through the air itself. Michael blinked. Once. Twice. Wait, what? Emma didn't look at him. She stayed focused on the call. "Yes, the Henderson wedding scheduled for tomorrow," she repeated. "Cancel everything. Ceremony, cocktail hour, reception. The ballroom is no longer available." She said it like she was canceling a lunch reservation. Calm, clear, absolute. "What are you doing?" her mother whispered, eyes wide with panic. Emma finally met her gaze, unflinching, cold, honest. "I'm making sure no one has to worry about a card being too small for such a grand venue," she said. "And I'm doing it as the owner." Emma stood up. Not rushed, not angry, just calm. The kind of calm that unnerves people more than shouting ever could. Her chair slid back slowly, the sound sharp in the silence. She placed her phone on the table, folded her napkin, straightened her posture. Then she spoke, and each sentence landed like a hammer. "I own 63% of Grandstone Hospitality. That includes the Grand Meridian and 17 other luxury hotels across 3 states. I'm the founder and majority shareholder of Phoenix Digital. We went public last year, current valuation $1.2 billion. The penthouse apartment you think I rent, I own the whole building. Floors 3 through 8 are my company's headquarters. The Honda Civic you laugh about? It's my assistant's. She drives me when I don't want to be recognized." Silence. Stunned, gasping, blinking silence. Michael looked like he'd swallowed glass. Sarah dropped her champagne flute. It shattered on the carpet. Her mother's lips moved, but no words came out. Emma looked at them all, the people who thought they knew her, the people who only ever saw what they wanted to see. And she said the one line that shattered them more than money ever could. "You judged me based on what I wore, but I built the ground you're standing on." For the first time all evening, the ballroom at the Grand Meridian fell completely silent. No more laughter, no more whispers. Even the clinking of forks had stopped. The hum of the air conditioning, the soft flicker of candlelight, the faint pop of a champagne bubble rising and bursting. That was all anyone could hear. Because in a room filled with money, status, and legacy, power had shifted. And it didn't belong to the politicians, or the real estate developers, or the socialites in diamonds and silk. It belonged to the woman in the $28 dress, the one they'd mocked. Dismissed. Forgotten. Emma? Sarah stared at her, eyes wide with disbelief. Michael looked pale. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Emma's father clutched his napkin like it was an anchor. Aunt Patricia blinked as if reality itself had broken. "You own all this?" she whispered. Emma turned toward her, voice low and even. "The chandeliers, the kitchen, the suite you're staying in upstairs, the valet who parked your Mercedes, all of it." She paused, looking around at the stunned, glassy-eyed faces. "And I pay every one of their salaries." Silence became respect. Respect became fear. And fear became regret. Emma didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words were heavier than anger, sharper than sarcasm, colder than silence. "You mocked me for years," she said, eyes fixed on no one and everyone. "At birthdays, weddings, family dinners, every time I showed up in something you didn't approve of." She looked at her mother. You told people I was the artistic one, but what you meant was, she's the one who never figured it out. She turned to Bradley. You used to joke that I'd be your intern one day. I let it go, because I didn't need your job. Then to her aunt. At Thanksgiving, you asked me loud enough for the room to hear, do you still live in that cute little box downtown? Like my life was a shoebox you could pat and ignore? She took a breath. Deep. Grounded. It's not about money. It never was. It's about how you treated me when you thought I had none. The silence cracked. No one could meet her gaze. Emma looked around one last time, no longer the outsider. You didn't fail to celebrate me because you didn't know I was rich. You failed because you thought I was irrelevant. Emma's voice softened, not with pity, but with clarity. The truth is, I did have a gift for you. Michael looked up. Hope flashed for a second. Sarah leaned forward, blinking. A real one. Not a card, not a scrapbook, not something small or forgettable. She let the silence stretch like silk pulled tight. I planned a honeymoon for you both, 1 month, starting in my villa in Tuscany, then a week in my Paris apartment right off the Seine, and 2 weeks sailing the Mediterranean on a private yacht I charter every summer. I'd already arranged everything, flights, chefs, staff. It was going to be a surprise. Michael swallowed hard. Sarah's lip quivered. But after tonight, Emma continued, I think the more appropriate gift is reminding you that not all wealth is obvious and not all kindness survives cruelty. Then she paused and delivered the final cut. So, yes, your honeymoon is canceled too. Emma didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam a hand on the table. She simply reached for her purse. She set it on the table, stood straight, and looked every single person in the eye slowly. I'm going to offer you something now, she said. One last gift. Murmurs stirred, but no one dared interrupt. For years, you treated me like I didn't belong, like I wasn't enough, like my value was tied to the price of my dress or the brand of my car. She paused. So now, I'm giving you a chance to learn what value really means. She walked once around the table, quiet, measured. Starting this Saturday, every single one of you will volunteer at Haven House, the shelter on 5th Street. Chairs shifted, mouths opened. You'll serve meals, clean bathrooms, sort donations, listen to stories from people who have lost everything and still managed to treat others with dignity. Then came the line that sliced through the room. If you refuse, then you're no longer my family. Dead silence. Emma folded her hands gently. No dinners, no holidays, no birthdays. No funerals. You'll be strangers. And considering I now own a significant portion of this city's real estate and hospitality infrastructure, being strangers with me might make life a little complicated. Saturday, 6:15 a.m. No velvet chairs, no crystal chandeliers, just bleach, buckets, and the smell of reality. Sarah stood frozen in front of a public restroom stall, toilet brush in hand, designer gloves stained. This is disgusting, she whispered, voice trembling. I can't do this. I'm not a janitor. Emma, who stood by the door in jeans and a volunteer apron, didn't speak. She simply pointed to the mop bucket. Across the hallway, Bradley was bent over a massive soup pot. His hands, usually reserved for fountain pens and legal contracts, now shook slightly as he tried to scoop hot porridge into a plastic bowl. An elderly man smiled at him, toothless but grateful. You're new here, he said warmly. Don't worry, it gets easier. You're doing fine, son. Bradley muttered a thank you and looked away ashamed. Outside, Uncle Richard argued with a donation sorter about lifting boxes. Do you know who I am? He snapped. The volunteer smiled. No, sir. and honestly, it doesn't matter here. In 1 week, everything had reversed. No more titles, no more suits, no more passive-aggressive table manners, just hands, sweat, and the smell of ammonia. Humility was no longer optional. It started on a Tuesday. Rain tapping lightly on the shelter's metal roof. No press, no audience, just people showing up. Michael sat on a bench beside an older man folding towels. The man had a military haircut and trembling hands. "You're new," the man said, folding carefully. "Let me guess, volunteering because of a sister?" Michael blinked, then smiled, embarrassed. "Something like that." The man chuckled, then went quiet. After a long pause, he said, "I was infantry, 2 tours, Afghanistan. Came back, couldn't sleep, couldn't talk. They called it PTSD. My wife left, my house went, my mind nearly did too." Michael looked down at the towel in his lap. He didn't say much, but for the first time, he didn't feel like correcting, explaining, or hiding. He just listened. Across the room, Emma's father, once proud, poised, untouchable, sat with a man holding a stack of crumpled papers. "You want a job, right?" "Yes, sir." "I can mop, stock shelves, fix stuff." "Then let's make this resume look like you mean business." He pulled out his own pen. For the first time, not to sign a deal, but to help a man rebuild his dignity. Emma watched from the doorway. No smile, no speech, just a quiet knowing. Something was shifting. By the 6th month, no one had to be reminded. There were no more glares, no more sighs, no more, "Are we done yet?" They just showed up. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early to sort toiletries without being asked. Bradley, who once laughed at handmade gifts, now organized donation drives at his law firm. Even Aunt Patricia, who used to wear pearls to family dinners, now wore scrubs and braided a young girl's hair while telling her bedtime stories. Something had shifted, and it wasn't just what they did, it was how they looked at people. Michael no longer looked at the unhoused with discomfort. He looked at them as neighbors. Emma's father started inviting local shelter residents to job fairs. Her mother brought her famous lasagna and stayed to eat with everyone instead of dropping it off and disappearing. No one said it out loud, but the lesson had landed. Wealth doesn't make you better. It just gives you more chances to treat people with dignity. Emma sat near the kitchen, watching from afar. She didn't need applause, didn't need "I'm sorry" anymore. She just watched her family finally become people she could be proud of. The new wedding wasn't at Grand Meridian. There were no gold-plated invitations, no social media hashtags, no paparazzi waiting outside. It was held at St. Bridget's, a tiny chapel on a hill with chipped paint and ivy crawling up the sides. 28 guests, no more, no less. Emma wore a navy blue dress. Sarah, no longer the ice queen of luxury, wore a second-hand lace gown with a soft veil that fluttered in the breeze. There were no chandeliers above, just sunlight streaming through stained glass. No violins, just the chapel's aging piano and Michael's friend Daniel nervously pressing the keys. But what filled the room was real. Laughter wasn't fake. Tears weren't rehearsed. When Sarah walked down the aisle, she wasn't smiling for a photographer. She was crying because this time she was grateful, not for a grand venue, not for designer shoes, but for a second chance to be a better person. Emma gave her brother away not out of duty, but out of love. And when Michael looked at his bride, he whispered, "This is the wedding we were meant to have." The air was quiet when Michael stood. His hands trembled slightly as he raised the glass. "I was blind," he said, his voice steady but soft. "Not because you hid Emma, but because I was too busy showing off to notice the person sitting quietly at the back of every room." The room stilled. "I never asked what you needed, never saw how hard you worked. All I saw was the car, the clothes, the surface." He looked at her eyes shimmering. "And I'm ashamed of that." A long pause. Then Sarah stood too. She took Emma's hand and whispered into the mic, "Thank you for canceling our first wedding." The guests chuckled nervously. But Sarah continued, voice breaking slightly, Because you didn't just stop a wedding. You stopped us from becoming people who mistake sparkle for substance. The whole chapel held its breath. And then applause. Real, raw, unplanned. Emma blinked, then smiled. This was the gift she didn't wrap in a box. Emma stood alone on the balcony of the Grand Meridian penthouse. The city lights stretched endlessly below. Her phone buzzed with board meetings. Her inbox flooded with investors and reporters. But for once, she silenced it all. She looked up at the night sky and whispered to herself, "I thought I was teaching them a lesson, but they taught me something too." She smiled, not the polite kind, not the business kind, but the one that comes when your soul finally exhales. Power isn't in owning a ballroom, or canceling a wedding, or having your name on a billion-dollar company. Real power is when you choose to lift someone up even when the world told you to push them down. That night, she wrote a check to the shelter not for 6 months, but for 6 years. She expanded Phoenix Digital's hiring program to include trauma survivors. She gave her assistant a promotion and a new car. And on Sundays, she still helped serve soup, not because she had to, but because she finally understood success isn't measured in zeros. It's measured in lives touched. The long folding table at Haven House wasn't draped in silk. There were no centerpieces, no orchestras, no 5-star menus, just metal trays, warm stew, and stories. Emma sat between her father and a quiet woman named Gloria, a single mom rebuilding her life. Michael passed bread down the table to a veteran missing half a leg. Sarah helped a teenager with shaky hands hold her cup. No photographers, no speeches, no press, just laughter, messy, real human laughter. And for the first time in her life, Emma looked around the table and thought, this is family. Not built on blood or money or performance, but on presence, on listening, on showing up. Her father tapped his spoon on the glass. "I used to think success meant private jets and stock options," he said. "But now, I think it's this, a room full of people who feel seen." That night, no one was above anyone, no one below, just hands passing bread and hearts mending quietly. That night, they broke me for the last time, and for the first time, I made them listen. Emma's words never made the news. There was no viral clip, no trending hashtag, but the silence in that ballroom, that was louder than applause. Because sometimes the most powerful legacy begins not with a crown, but with a crack. The crack of a wine glass trembling in her hand. The crack in her voice when she stood. The crack in their pride when the truth hit. She didn't seek revenge. She sought clarity. She didn't want to destroy her family. She wanted to finally be seen by them. And in the ruins of one broken dinner, something new was built. A family who serves. A brother who sees. A father who listens. A woman who leads quietly, powerfully. Not with noise, but with grace. The girl they once mocked for her dress became the woman who redressed their hearts. Never judge someone by what you see on the surface or what you think you know about their life. True worth isn't measured by money, status, or social rank. It's measured by how someone lives, how they overcome challenges, and how they treat others. Family and love shouldn't be weighed by material things or social standing, but by respect, understanding, and unconditional care. When you use your strength and success to lift others up, you don't just change their lives, you create lasting value for yourself. Open your heart, listen deeply. Appreciate the stories behind every person. That's what truly makes us human. If this story touched your heart and you believe everyone deserves respect and understanding, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss another powerful, heartfelt story on Pieces of Soul. Tap the notification bell to get alerts for our latest videos. Share this video with your friends and family to spread a message about the power of kindness and forgiveness. Thank you for being part of Pieces of Soul, where stories don't just touch your soul, they change lives.